Hey there gang, today we're having a look at a rather high-end folding pocket knife called the Strider SNG. This is made by the now defunct Strider production knife company. Mick Strider is a custom knife maker who long had a Strider production company. Makes sort of similar knives to, like, similar in concept and purpose to, say, your Rick Hinderer knives or your Emerson knives, kind of aimed at the the first responder type, hard user portion of the market. Strider's got a couple of they're not his signatures. Well, one certainly isn't that go across his knives. Probably two fairly obvious in this frame right now. One is this quite often used sort of opening oval type hole there, which you do see on lots of other knives, which isn't completely unique to him. And the other one is this rather large sort of heavy butt end of the knife, which is definitely kind of a Strider trademark or design flourish that does make the knife quite distinctly his. Just the general angle of heaviness sort of coming down makes it kind of like this weird combination of like a real sort of utilitarian looking heavy duty design, but also kind of like artish and angular and geometric as well. Really sort of quite interesting and actually not, actually fairly well thought out in terms of being practical too. So very interesting designs to Strider knives, and very big thank you to my subscriber Chris for sending this to me, because this is a knife I would never have bought, because these are really expensive. These are like Sebenza level price knives. Really quite pricey indeed. You're talking like $400 for quite a basic one, and this is sort of a fairly basic one with just a G10 handle and a flat grind. You get ones with compound sort of nightmare grinds, all sorts of different things. The essential Spider template for a knife is more or less this knife. There are more heavy duty versions. The SNG is like the one made for sort of daily carry rather than clipping to a combat vest and going to war with. So this is your everyday carry Strider model made by the Strider company. Other Striders can be found, I think they did a combination with Zero Tolerance. Zero Tolerance made a ZT's type Strider knife as well a while back. But generally you're going to be either paying $1,000 for a full Mick Strider custom or even more, or you're going to be paying about $400 for a Strider production. That might be going up now that the production side of the company's closed down. So there you have it. So what have you got here for your knife? You get quite a big, sturdy, stout blade, even though it is the everyday carry model. This is it next to a small Sebenza 21. That's there's about $1,000 worth of knife on the table right now, at least $1,000 Australian dollars, which is quite crazy if you really think about it, or even if you don't think about it, even if you just give it a passing thought. That's madness, isn't it? But there you go. And this is it next to a Benchmade 940. So it's sort of in that size, the sort of mid to large size EDC folder. However, this one does seem a bit larger than most due to two things: this sort of wider butt here, and also some fairly thick blade stock. Not overwhelmingly thick, but definitely on the thicker side blade stock. It's a Greg. This isn't a Greg Medford knife by any means, but it's definitely a thicker stock. So you're in that three. You've got about 3 inches of actual cutting blade, but you've got almost 3.5 to 4 of serviceable steel coming out of the edge. A lot of it's given to that forward finger choil, and a little bit more to that sharpening ricasso. So let's see how much this knife weighs. This is actually one of the things that really struck me with this blade here, is that it's actually quite lightweight, especially when you pick it up. And I mean, so it should be. It's titanium here and G10, almost sort of semi-integral G10. So it's the one piece that they've kind of cut all the way out and milled out and made sort of hollowed out to fill with the knife when it folds, and then they've put it onto this titanium scale here. So the total weight of the knife is 128 grams, which really, for a fairly full-size beefy folder, if you think like the Benchmade 940 is a lot more slender, and that's 80 grams, so your extra 40 grams is going to go a fair bit more actual blade mass in terms of thickness and height and all that sort of thing, and also a lot more handle to fill your hand with as well. So it is deceptively light, and that's one of the really good things about it. Other really good things about this knife, the ergonomics are quite fantastic. In both grips, in the further back grip like this, very comfortable. There is something to this handle shape. It isn't just purely for looks. It does kind of just fit you. As your fingers get smaller and narrower, the handle gets bigger to accommodate them. So it's actually quite a well thought out handle as well is looking quite unique. So double points for Strider there. And then when you choke up to this point here, again, really comfortable, no hot spots. The nice flat pocket clip is really good in hand. It doesn't dig anywhere. I find it quite comfortable too. So ergonomically, this is a really well done knife too. The blade steel in this one is about as good as you want blade steel, in my opinion. I did a cut test with this knife, and it cut, I think, 285 slices of the rope. It's the name of the steel is CTS 40CP. That was a steel that I was completely unfamiliar with. The only info I had was that it was based on a 440C recipe, but obviously powder steel and some different things done to it. Otherwise, they would just call it 440C. So yeah, it's a really good cutter, and that both in edge retention and in also being an actual performant, because this really high, rather thin grind behind the edge is really good to be using for pretty much anything. It's stout enough to not be worrying about, like some hollow grinds you might worry about, twisting and chipping out or, cracking or anything like that. It's got some, gravity to it, but it's also nice and tall and slicey as well. It's a really good mix and a really well done blade. Really good blade shape. You get a strong point, so it's a thick tip, but also a tip that can be, used for fairly fine jobs too. So very cool there. Another really cool thing about this knife, and I think this is maybe whether it's a Strider idea or whether it's a trademark, is that pivot is, in terms of looks anyway, it's hollow. So you can see my hand moving through it, and I'll just run a couple of pictures up. You can see straight through the pivot, so it's got sort of obviously a hollow donut kind of washer and then a donut sort of pin in the middle of it. So very interesting. How that amounts to how the knife is to take apart probably makes it a little bit trickier. Looks like you might need some sort of custom hardware there for that pivot, so that might be a bit of a negative if you do like to take your knife apart. Me, I'm more than just blast it out with WD-40 and re-oil it from the outside with very rarely taking my knives apart, so not a big a deal to me. In terms of smoothness, the knife is pretty smooth, so you can kick it open with the thumb stud, no worries. You do need to think about it. It's not on bearings or anything, so it's not super, it's not like flying out like, say, like a zero tolerance 0850 or something like that. It's not on bearings, so it's just a pair of good bronze fossil washers, no problems at all. It shoots out really easily and it locks up nicely. The opening hole, if you would call it that, works, but it's not as good as the thumb stud. The thumb stud does double as a blade stop as well, catching in this back portion of the knife. Just here there's like a little hook for it, so you open up, you see the blade, the thumb studs settle there, but they definitely feel like they're in the right position to be used as thumb studs as well, so no problems there. Very nice, smooth, and obviously a really well made knife to feel as you open and close it. It does have the sort of same feeling that you get when you open and close like a Sebenza, just nice and glassy, doesn't make too much noise. Obviously quite reasonable tolerances put into it, as there should be, because you do pay a whole lot of money for this knife. A couple of things that I've noticed that are probably, that aren't ideal. There's a little bit of lock stick when you open the knife, especially when you open it with a bit of vigor. So when you do crack it open like that, there's a little bit of, you can hear that little tick. A little bit of lock stick. That's titanium. That will change and that will probably wear out. This is a fairly new knife, I understand. And in the meantime, if you really don't like it, you can put some Sharpie on the faces that contact. So when the knife's closed like this, just squeeze through and put some Sharpie on the back of the blade there. No problems at all. In terms of the handle material, this is G10. It just doesn't feel. It feels a little bit tinny and hollow or something. It feels a bit, I don't know, like maybe it should be reinforced with something. I'm not sure. It's a little strange thing I've sort of come to think about these knives that sell themselves as being the heavy duty kind of knives. And I know G10's like a modern, super hard, very high quality material, but I'm also thinking it kind of feels a little bit sort of lightweight or something. So I think if you held the knife you might understand a bit better than my words are putting it across, because on one side you've got obviously a really stout titanium slab that has the lock, and it feels, you can tell it's a lot heavier than this other side, and it just feels like it might need a bit of a counterbalance this way or something. I mean, it's cool how it's one sort of integral-ish piece, so it's not got a backspace or anything like that. That's kind of cool. It looks very, it looks neat, and I like the color, and the grip pattern on it's good. It just feels a little bit lightweight, and I think it's more of a, I've just spent sort of $400 and something on this knife. It just kind of feels a little bit not $400-ish, if you know what I mean. With no offense to people who like G10 handles or something, it's just when you're spending a whole lot of money, I don't know, I'm just not sure if G10's the material that you'd be wanting. And yeah, that's just my opinion. And it's just, G10 or any plastic never feels as nice, like with things like jimping. So the jimping on the G10 side of this, where you rest your thumb, for example, is quite sort of harsh and grabby, which I guess you might want. But on the titanium side, it's got that sort of, it feels just a bit more sturdy, but also grabby enough to actually do its job. So just a bit funny, a bit uneven, just a bit, wonky or something about it, not quite right. So probably the only real criticism I'd level at it, apart from that tiny bit of lock stick, which will go away, is that the G10 doesn't feel like $400 worth of knife G10. Say my Sebenza here, even this I think is overpriced for sure, but at least you're getting 2 pieces of titanium with some this has got some bogwood in it, there's some sort of heritage or, hidden quality to it or something, G10 for a knife that's effectively the same price, just doesn't quite seem like it's there, especially when it's not lioned or anything like that. I know they're going for ultralight or as light as they can, but just, I'm struggling to put it into words. It just doesn't quite feel right to me, that's all. But overall, it's definitely a unique piece. If you were collecting sort of, and these types of tactical focus blades are your thing, I think owning or experiencing a Strider is like a really good idea, because it's a very iconic design, and it's a design you can only get from either Strider or from buying a clone of some sort from like China somewhere, like the D2. I know they sell ones that look exactly like this in D2 or whatnot. I'd probably recommend getting a Strider, because I think in terms of action and how it's put together and fit and finish and the steel and the grind and all that sort of thing, it's definitely really professionally done and done to a really high standard for sure. It's just whether or not you're going to be happy to spend the kind of cash that you need to get one of these. It's a bit like the Sebenza thing. I had to hold a Sebenza in hand to be certain that I'd actually want to sink that money onto it. And even still, I wish it was less. I'm still not quite feeling the value from this. I really enjoy this knife, but I would wish, sorry about the bang there. I do wish it was, in the $300 rather than the $400 price range, that's all. And I kind of feel the same way about this one. I mean, the steel on this one will last a little bit longer than the steel on this one in terms of raw edge retention, but I still don't feel like you're quite getting the value. But I think once you've spent the money and once you've got it in your pocket, you kind of just forget about money, really, don't you, in the end? If you can't let that go, though, you'll probably find yourself a little bit unhappy at things like the G10 and the lock stick and that sort of stuff. But if you can just sort of put it out of mind what you've spent and just enjoy having a knife that fits really well on your hand, cuts really, really well because it's got an excellently ground blade with really good steel, and carries pretty good with its low-profile pocket clip, despite sort of having a bit of bum sticking out. Quite a good knife in pocket too. Then I think you're going to be happy with your Strider SNG for sure. Thank you very much, Chris, for letting me borrow your Strider for reviewing and mainly for that cut test. And I'll be sending it back to you very soon. And thank you all very much for watching, dudes. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.